Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about a really fascinating group of people, Brazil's Millennials, also known as GenerationY. You know, they're the generation that basically had one foot in the old analog world and the other planted right in the digital future. And the thing is, they didn't just watch the revolution happen, they were the ones building it.
So to really get who they are, you've got to look at where they sit in history. I mean, they're literally sandwiched between the super skeptical Gen X and the totally digital native Gen Z. And this idea our source brings up, this HD anxiety, what is that? Well, think about it. It's that feeling of having a childhood that was, kind of grainy and low-res. And then, boom, suddenly you're thrown into this high-definition, always-on digital world, and you're just expected to know how to live in it.
All right, so here's what we're going to dive into. We'll kick things off with that HD anxiety that really defined them. Then we'll follow their journey from dial-up to smartphones, see how they totally changed things like craft coffee and even the map of Brazil. And finally, we'll wrap up by looking at how they became this essential bridge between two completely different eras.
Okay, so let's start with the world they grew up in. I want you to picture this. You want to get online, and what do you hear? That absolute symphony of screeching and beeping from a dial-up modem. And of course, the most important part, screaming at your mom to get off the phone so you could finally log into MSN Messenger. That, right there, was their reality.
And you can see this whole analog-digital tension perfectly in how they went to school. I mean, they were the very last generation to have to drag those massive, heavy encyclopedias from the shelf for a school project. But they were also the first to discover the glorious magic of Control-C, Control-V from Wikipedia. And oh man, who can forget the irony? Every teacher saying, you won't always have a calculator in your pocket. Well, look at us now. We've got supercomputers in our pockets that we mostly use to watch silly videos. On top of all that, they were dealing with crazy academic pressure, where the national university exam, the vestibular, was treated like it was the World Cup final. No pressure, right?
But here's the thing. This generation didn't just sit back and adapt to all this new tech. No way. They rolled up their sleeves, got their hands dirty, and actually started shaping the digital tools and platforms that we all just take for granted today.
And the speed of this change was just dizzying. Seriously, in just their youth, they went from waiting days, sometimes weeks, to get a roll of film developed to just uploading whole albums to Orkut in minutes. That landline phone, the one stuck to the wall, it turned into a supercomputer in their pocket, buzzing with 300 notifications a minute. And that mixtape you spent hours recording on a cassette tape? Poof, it's now a folder of MP3s. This wasn't just a slow change, it was a total quantum leap.
And this timeline really shows you just how fast that leap happened. Think about it. In the early 2000s, if you were social in Brazil, you were on Orkut and MSN. That was it. Then, just a few years later in 2005, YouTube shows up, probably because a few millennials wanted a better way to share funny videos. Then, bam, 2007, the first iPhone drops. And by 2010, Instagram is live. So in less than a single decade, the entire foundation of the social media world we live in now was built. And this generation, they were both the architects and the very first citizens.
But their impact went way beyond just the tech stuff. It was deeply cultural. They were the pioneers of all these new, and let's be honest, sometimes really weird ways of interacting online. Remember the Facebook poke? What even was that? Or those blinking scraps on Orkut? But maybe most importantly, they took a simple inside joke and turned it into a global digital art form, the meme. Yep, you can thank them for that.
So you might be wondering, how does all this digital stuff change something as basic as, well, taste? It turns out that same impulse to document everything, to share it, to make every experience look amazing, that HD anxiety we talked about, it started getting applied to everyday life. And it totally transformed what Brazilians were eating and drinking.
Just look at their drink menu. It tells you everything you need to know. A simple beer? Nope, not good enough. It had to be a craft beer, with detailed notes of caramel that you could post on Instagram. Coffee wasn't just with or without sugar anymore. Suddenly, it was a latte macchiato with almond foam. They basically made energy drinks the official fuel for getting through college and then going out all night. And cocktails got a major upgrade, with strawberry caipiroscas and fancy gin and tonics becoming the norm because, they looked great in a photo.
And their food choices basically tell the story of their lives. It all started with that simple analog pleasure of Cheetos and the bright orange fingers that came with them. Then came college, and the official cuisine was instant noodles, or miojo. Fast food places? Those weren't just for eating, they were the main social hangout spot. But then, as they grew up, they brought global food to the mainstream, turning sushi from something exotic into a regular weekend thing and making avocado toast a brunch staple.
Now, all this energy didn't just stay trapped online. As this generation grew up and became the main workforce in the country, they started to physically change the cities around them. They were literally reshaping the landscape of Brazil's biggest capitals.
And what's cool is that they left a different mark on each city. You go to São Paulo and you see Paulista Avenue just flooded with startups and co-working spaces. In Recife, they built the amazing Porto Digital Tech Hub powered by coffee and that delicious local cake, Bolo de Rolo. Down in Florianopolis, they created Silicon Island, this awesome mix of tech startup life and surfing. They even took old traditions and gave them a digital spin, turning Salvador's Carnaval into a massive YouTube event for the whole world to see. And yeah, to the horror of some locals in Belém, they're the ones who put açaí in a cup so it could be shipped everywhere.
So, when you put it all together, you get to the absolute core of what it means to be a Brazilian millennial. They're not just analog and they're not just digital. Their whole identity is built on being that crucial bridge that connects those two completely different worlds. You can think of them as translators, really. They're totally fluent in two languages. They can speak the analog language of their parents, but they're also native speakers of the digital world they helped create. They get why a physical photo album feels so special, but they also intuitively understand the algorithms of a social media feed. And that ability to speak both languages, that dual fluency, that's their defining feature. It's their real legacy.
And our source for this explainer really sums it all up with this perfectly witty line. It just captures the absolute essence of what this generation brought to the table. Yeah, there was genuine, world-changing innovation, but it came with this brand new need to have everyone know you were doing it, to have your efforts seen, counted, and validated with a simple like.
Which, of course, leaves us with one final big question to chew on. If Generation Y were the ones who built this massive bridge from the analog world to the digital one, what's going to be built next by Gen Z, the first generation to grow up living entirely on the digital side of that bridge? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.